Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, та вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 665 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And the Russians are taking heavy losses, so heavy, I'm telling you. It's despicable. It's horrible.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. But we are going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and the Russians have been beaten, practically senseless, in the area of Avdiivka overnight, and we're also getting some pretty big indicators that the Russians are reaching about the end of the rope as far as the manpower side of things can go. But, of course, there is a lot to cover from front to front, and not only that, we've also heard of the Russians taking quite high losses as well in the area of Krynky, and it looks like the Ukrainians may have actually trapped Russian forces in a bit of a bind down there, specifically in the area around Krynky. But we're going to be moving on into our first bit of news tonight, which is actually going to be in the battlefield of Avdiivka, the most active part of the battlefield in the entirety of the front line, and also the one where we saw the most happening over the past 24 hours. We've seen a lot of things. I'm going to start off by telling y'all that the Russians appear to be, at this point, on the edge of not having enough manpower to reinforce their units in this area, at least during these next few weeks, because they took a shipment of wounded soldiers that have been wounded in the area of the battlefield of Avdiivka, probably as far south as Mikhailivka, and probably as far north as Novoselivka on this direction. But all of these wounded soldiers were put back onto a bus, and instead of being sent to Russia or Rostov-on-Don for further medical treatment, they were instead sent into Avdiivka, even though they were still wounded, because apparently there are not enough available soldiers and reinforcements for the Russian army to keep the fight or the battle going in this part of the front line, and so they're deciding to send these wounded soldiers back the way they are. You see here them dragging the wounded soldiers into the back of this transport and getting them ready to go back towards the front. This is a telltale indicator that the Russians, as far as this part of the front line, have completely run out of any available reinforcements, and they're now having to use literally anyone or in the area, even the wounded, to try and reinforce these units and at least keep their manpower numbers statistically in line. That's the end of the clip, but showing that the Russians are in an incredibly desperate situation at this point. It also seems as though a lot of Russian soldiers are starting to lose a decent amount of faith, at least in the Russian army, and they're turning to mass prayers, so that way hopefully they can find some protection within the prayers. This is a video that was made of a large Russian, a contingent of Russian soldiers conducting a prayer on the front lines. Notice in this instance, this is something that's probably the most important to note out of this clip. It's completely devoid of any of those usual kind of television priests that the Russians put on for propaganda purposes. This appears to be a prayer that's actually led possibly by the company commander of this Russian unit, and it shows that they are, of course, seeing that the frontline losses are so great, there is probably no hope alive of them making it out. We can also see they've made an aisle, and apparently the end of the pew is a 5.45 ammo crate. That's new. We can also tell that they are quite close to the front lines in this clip, or at least about to go on to it, probably within the next few hours after this clip was made, because all of them already have their weapons and combat gear on, which we usually also do not see in the propaganda videos, where they're doing the prayer for propaganda purposes. Also note the complete lack amongst most soldiers in this company of any kind of winter camouflage. It appears that all of them are still wearing summer camouflage patterns and do not have any snow weather gear issued to them. Which is once again showing that the Russian logistical situation in this area is also quite rough as well, and does not appear to be on the up and up, and in fact appears to be getting even worse. Moving on from that clip and into our actual frontline footage, it seems as though from the limited clips of frontline footage that we got today, things were still going quite poorly for the Russian offensives that were trying to move further behind Avdiivka and encircle the Ukrainian garrison that is inside of the city. In the area of Vadiane, we got to see that a Russian APC was hit and destroyed in what appears to be an ATGM strike, and we can see this clip right here. We can see the vehicle get hit. It appears to roll on just a little bit and then come to a complete stop. And it now appears that the tank is just smoldering and getting ready to most likely explode. From what we can see, it's possibly a BMD, or it actually may be a BMP. We can see them looking around, and we can see a couple of the Russian soldiers trying to get their senses back after the APC has been knocked out. And we can tell from this angle, it's not a BMP, it is in fact a BMD. Usually used by airborne forces, but it appears that in some minor exceptions, some of these BMDs are being issued to frontline units around the area of Avdiivka. We can see
and also, could it be that the poles are actually fixed? I can't believe it. I saw some people saying that they can see them now.
Oh, thank the Lord!
It's a Christmas miracle, I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, it's a real Christmas miracle. But anyways, we can see the ammunition is finally cooked off inside of that BMD, creating a catastrophic explosion and destroying the vehicle right outside the village of Vidyane. Once again, showing that the Russians are not able at the moment to make any kind of actual advances. We know that these advances have to have armor inside of them, because that is what the Russian military doctrine requires. The Russian military doctrine has not evolved that much since the Soviet era and still relies on massed armored vehicles supporting the infantry, or more so massed armor making the way for the infantry that follows behind them. So seeing a armored vehicle get destroyed and no subsequent offensive shows that that is as far as the Russian forces were practically able to make it in that single day. And that vehicle, from what we could tell, was destroyed right up north of Vidyane, right about there, somewhere where the mouse cursor is. But moving on to the footage that we also got from the area of Stepove, we do see that in this area there is a very steady trickle of Russian forces that continue to come across, kind of like that leaky faucet that probably the pipes are about to burst in since it's getting cold and it's wintertime and everyone's pipes in the south burst and then fill your house full of water like it's some kind of a freezing cold swimming pool, which makes winter so much fun because you have to deal with that on top of everything else. But more importantly, what we can see at Stepove is that the Ukrainians in the 47th Magura Brigade are using their Bradleys in more creative ways to try and stop this endless wave of Russians who keep on running across the railroad berm and into the completely destroyed village of Stepove. We're going to be muting that. Boop, beep. But we can see the Russians getting into the basement. Sadly, there's no candy down there for them. There's only a Bradley. Y'all will see in a second what I mean. But you can see another one getting down there. They're packing this thing full. And here comes the Bradley, just rolling right up to their position. They're like, forget the guns. Just run over the entrance to the basement and just leave it at that. So that's what they do. They just run over the entrance to the basement right there. Back over it. And there we have it. The Russians aren't getting out. And then as it falls back, it lays down a little bit of fire into the area. Probably just to let them get the idea they probably can't get out. Pops some smoke, and then spins around to leave. And we can also see that Bradley's got the brat armor. Oh, jawohl, you like the brats, yeah? Oh, and we do. We love them. And there was the entrance to the basement, now closed off. So, collateral.
Does that mean they're not coming on, then?
Yes. Yes, that means they are not coming on, for sure. No doubt about it. But we keep on...
They won't be missed.
They will never be missed. You know, the Russians are probably not even going to call their names out during roll call the next day. It's just going to be like, nah, you know what, they're not even here. But what we keep on seeing is that the Russians have this one tree line that they use, and it's like their lifeline to getting across the railroad berm. It's this one right here. There's a small amount of sheds. This is actually a small railway station for Stepove on this railroad line that they're apparently using as a jumping point from these buildings, or at least the rubble of those buildings, to then try and run down the tree line and then skirt across this little open area and into the ruins of the village houses on the other street. That appears to be what they're constantly doing day after day, just endlessly, and it doesn't appear to be producing any kind of good results for them. It seems as though the Magura has created a killing field out of Stepove and has artillery dialed in on it, and also brings in the Bradleys whenever they need to take out the Russian forces that may have survived the artillery. We're also seeing that it must be impossible for Russian armor to move over this area and into Stepove, because one of the first times ever we don't see Russian armor leading the way with the infantry following behind them. It's the Russian infantry leading the way, and the armor is completely non-existent in this part of the Avdiivka battlefield. This is indicating to us that apparently the tree line in this area is so thick around the railroad that the tanks are not able to move through, and therefore the Russian infantry are pushed across and into Stepove on the other side without really any kind of support, and therefore just wiped out in large numbers. And we saw that again today, like in that clip, and we also got reports that a decent amount of losses, there was something around 900 Russian soldiers lost today. Around 150 of them were lost around the Stepove area of the Avdiivka battlefield alone over the past 24 hours, which is a very significant loss rate. But moving on from that, we also got a drone footage showing us the condition of the city of Avdiivka and what it was looking like over the past few days. This video was made by the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. I don't know if they licensed their music, though, so we're going to have to mute that. And when you see the sign here that says Avdiivka is Ukraine, which is a nice sign. You gotta admit, nice. We see here them destroying, showing the destroyed buildings. Of course, an unfortunate sign showing that the Russians have continued to destroy hundreds of thousands of lives, millions of lives at this point, of people who had well-planned connections inside of cities like these and will probably never have them again and may not ever return. But at the same time, while it's a sad thing to see, it is a positive thing to see and a silver lining, because that kind of destruction shows that the Ukrainians have put up a fight in this city, the likes of which we had never even seen until now. Bakhmut was a massive battle, and one that had incredibly large casualties surrounding it, and still is the longest battle of the Ukraine war. Avdiivka has already taken the title, in the incredibly short amount of time it has lasted compared to Bakhmut, of being the deadliest battle of the war, particularly for the Russians. And not only that, we see that the battle is probably going to drag on way longer than the Battle of Bakhmut ever did, and it is showing that the Ukrainians are putting every piece of effort, every ounce of strength that they can into defending against the Russians and stopping them from taking any additional land. That is a very good thing, and therefore the destruction of the buildings, while being very sad that people's lives and families will never be the same again, and they'll come back to a city that is just a shell, literally a shell of what it once was, that is a testament and a monument to the amazing fighting spirit and morale of the Ukrainian soldiers who have kept the front line in that area for so long that the city could be destroyed in such a way. But moving on from the battlefield of Avdiivka, and the way that the Russians have ended up being trapped in Stepove again for about the 900th time, over like 3 months or so, we're now going to be moving on into Russia, because I think it's important to note for everyone that the Russians are not having a good time with the losses side of things, or really anything for that matter. And it appears that some Russian companies are starting to take advantage of this and starting to get really creative with their advertisings in the mall. I'm going to show y'all what kind of advertisings they have. They're coffins.
Oh, wait a minute. Is that like a real Russian, like with a real like advertisement?
Yes, that is an advertising
point?
campaign for caskets for dead soldiers.
Huh. That's an interesting look.
So that way you're
very interesting.
So that way your soldier boy can look real nice after he's been killed on the battlefield. That's literally what the ad's about. This guy walks around in this mall, and you can see the coffin displays behind him for the real coffins. And he sits there and walks around with this thing on, trying to advertise and encourage people to buy Kherson coffins instead of anyone else's coffins. Kind of giving you an idea.
And why is the guy on the left, like the salesman, like doing the rock symbol and everything? Like this is a real cool thing. It's a casket.
Dude, he's like, look at this. We got Caillou in the coffin. Effing rad. It's like, what the hell? It's like,
you ever thought about dying, bro? Try out one of my caskets. You'll love it.
Dude, he's like, dying is badass, and we got deals to die for. It's like, what is the, like, really, why is he so, like, enthusiastic about this ad campaign? And really, why do they have Caillou in the casket? Like, who picks Caillou to be in there? It's like,
Man,
get this...
rip Caillou.
Yeah, rip Caillou. Get this poor leukemia-ridden guy out of this coffin and get someone who looks like, you know, like they're not already on death's door now. They picked this guy just for that reason. They're like, you know what? He looks bald, a little thin. You know what? We'll act like he's on death's door now. What the hell are they thinking? But also, it gets worse because These guys took like the route of like, let's make it look like the guy is in the coffin to advertise the coffins. No, another company decided, let's make the coffins sexy. And so this department of Kherson got some models to stand at the front of the mall with a gold coffin to sit there and advertise the coffins. You can't even make this stuff up, dude. Like, I can't, I'm like, how does a family go into a mall, Matthew, and go, why, yes, these sexy women right here make the coffin look quite nice. I'll buy one. What
and even worse than that, that is a coffin designed to look like a Egyptian coffin or like King Tut, and there's a pyramid over there on the left like it's Egypt or something. And then they got like, you know, the sexy models standing around the coffin like, oh yeah, you're going to love this. Dude, this is like the lowest I think I've seen Russians ever get, like right here. Like, to have this in a mall, you have to be a nutcase to actually like approve this as a marketing person.
I don't know if this actually works or not, because for them to do something like this, it has to have worked somewhere. For someone to, in their marketing team, to have gone, you know what, let's roll this out for the entirety of the Russian Federation. I don't know. It's a little weird.
What happened to the Lada? Like, don't they get a free Lada if they, you know, get croaked on the battlefield? They get a free car?
I mean, maybe. I'm guessing that doesn't even exist anymore, because they are like going all in on just marketing. Like, the companies are going all in on marketing coffins, and apparently the burial expenditures are not even covered anymore. Otherwise, why would they market the coffins like this to Russian soldiers? Because it's the same company in both of these different malls, though, from what we could tell. And they're all like, you could tell they're targeting dead Russian soldiers as like their #1 market. So
that dude on the left, I guarantee you, he's the one who approved the marketing plan, because he's all out of touch with reality. He's doing the rock symbol next to a coffin, and also he's like, let's put a pyramid out there, bliat, and let's put some girls next to the coffins.
Dude, he's like,
man. And also, it's like, aren't families coming along and buying these coffins? Like, the soldiers aren't buying the coffins.
I know, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, the soldiers aren't buying these coffins. They're dead. Their family's buying the coffin. So, like, does a 60-year-old, 70-year-old dad come in and go, well, yes, these scantily clad women make me want to buy this coffin in particular. I will buy too. It's like, what in the world is the marketing ploy? But I don't get it. Like, I don't get this at all. But it's showing how bad off the Russians are. And also, like, what kind of mindset do the Russians have where that kind of marketing even has a chance in hell of working? Like, that's my question. Because I couldn't imagine that working in the United States. I feel like that would be an outrage if someone tried to market something like that. It would be like the heart attack grill. That doesn't make any sense at all, what they're doing. But that's how bad things are, and that's how high the Russian losses really are at this point, is that coffin companies are advertising their coffins directly to families that have dead relatives who have died in the war. That's how bad it's gotten for them.
It's nuts.
It's literally nuts, not included. But anyways, moving on from that and into the area of Western Ukraine, we also got to see that while the Russians are learning how to tie up the bridges they build quite well, you know, with the communication of you've been voluntold in the army, you die, boo-hoo, sexy women in their coffins. It appears that the Ukrainians are learning to build bridges instead, and the 808th Separate Pontoon Bridge Regiment has been in the area of Western Ukraine, learning how to build pontoon bridges, or more specifically create barges out of the pontoons. This is a very important thing to do, creating a barge like this, because it's really the only way that, if the Ukrainians wanted to, they could effectively ford the Dnipro River. Creating a caisson bridge, like we saw the Russians do earlier in the war, is logistically better because it's a permanent bridge and you can actually keep traffic going at all times, and also allows for a higher bridge capacity. But at the same time, it's also a target and something that you wouldn't want stagnant in the same area near a front line and artillery distance, because the chances of it getting destroyed is around 90% or even higher. In fact, it's practically 100%, because that will become the #1 target if anyone knows what they're doing on the other side. The Ukrainians are probably trying to train their troops in every single bridge-laying regiment as possible how to make these pontoons and how to operate them effectively, so that way when the time comes, they can bring these bridge regiments into the area of the Dnipro River near Kherson and start to ferry over a large number of soldiers and equipment. It's honestly a fairly smart move, and hopefully we'll get to see that they are able to continue to try and keep these bridge-laying platoons ready to go, so that way whenever they have the moment to start sending over larger and heavier equipment onto the southern end of the Dnipro River, they can do it at a moment's notice, and it looks like they're continuously getting ready for that. Speaking
I think
of
that's that bridge over troubled water that Elvis Presley was always talking about.
man, I don't even know what song that is, but I agree.
Everybody in the chat will, at least.
Oh,
I
everybody
think.
will, except for me. I live in a hole. That's why I get to do this news, y'all, because I live in a hole. But speaking of living in holes and bridge over troubled waters, it's time for us to get down into Kherson really quickly, because it appears that the Russians are in really troubled waters lately, near the direction of Krynky. The Ukrainian forces, now having taken the entirety of the village, are posing a very effective defense of the entirety of the village and appear to be inflicting some decent casualties on the VDV brigade, or more so the division, that has been posed with the job of trying to uproot the Ukrainians from the village and push them back out. Moving on into our first video, we got to see that a Russian T-72B3 was destroyed by the 36th Marine Brigade near Krynky. The caption states that this video was published today, exactly, although the foliage looks like it may be late summer, but we're going to take the caption for what it is at face value and say that this video was published today, and from what we can tell, a T-72B3 being in the area means that this is probably attached to another brigade or a division that is operating further west of Kherson and towards Kazanchi-Lakhri or the Zelenskyy Sands area at Chilberta. We always see that pretty much the only tanks that the VDV division has been using at this point are T-90Ms, and we have not seen them using T-72B3s. So we have a pretty good idea that this T-72B3 is somewhere on the western side of Krynky and was destroyed by the 36th Marine Brigade, which is fighting right now in the area of the town of Krynky. It's me!
The hell?
Well, I don't know what song that was, but I'll call it cringe. We can see the drone flying on in. And we can also see what appears to be some kind of a compound, and if we want to, we could try and geolocate this off of that compound. So we know that this is near Krynky, so we're looking for some kind of a farm compound, which we appear to have already found right there. Let's see if it lines up. That appears to be in some kind of a field, but there's a dirt road leading to it in a compound further back. And we do not see a compound further back in this clip, so let's see if we see one back here. So it may be that way. And do we have a dirt road that lines up? We might, actually. Right about here, this could be the dirt road we're possibly looking at, but I don't know if the sight line works out in that or not. It may, actually, so it looks like this drone was flying in somewhere around right here, and this is pretty much right in between dead center of Kazanchi-Lakhri and Krynky, showing that our frontline map so far, if the geolocation is correct, is accurate. We can see the drone flying on in, slamming directly into the top of the T-72B3, and immediately detonating the ammunition cache inside and causing a critical detonation of the ammunition stowage, creating a fire. Have you ever wanted to see a Russian tank billow black smoke like that kid you saw at the high school that always was smoking a vape? Well, I'm introducing you to the brand new Russian strawberry daiquiri flavored T-72B3. You're going to be chuffing and huffing just like a Russian tanker when you sit there and get the cool whiff of strawberry daiquiri down your lungs and a little bit of cancer just like the carcinogens from this burning wreckage of a tank. Make sure to buy your brand new Smoke 'em Dope 'em. That's it. Anyways, we're going to end the joke right there because that's not going to go anywhere good beyond that. But great to see that the 36th Marine Brigade was able to destroy that T-72B3. We're now going to be moving on to our next clip where we also got to see another Russian tank in the area going nuclear. And guess who got to watch it? Our boy Matyan! Shaka shaka, blia! But anyways, here's the clip.
Перше джерело до вашої
Legend.
ранкової кави. У вас кращі квитки Grand View прямо з Бенуара. Винахід Галілео Галілея точно не знадобиться. Ви готові? Бада-буміще!
Bada-boom!
Turret toss?
He said, "Wah, wah, wah."
Виглядає
I can't repeat that.
лупачий жах на крилках.
That how they worms, they
Кінчений
worm.
дроном.
Man, they
Finished
be,
by one FPV.
Народним.
man, they do be worming and they do be squirming.
З усією українською ненавистю до ворога. Жріте, хробаки!
Eat it, worms. Bon appetit. Enjoy your food.
Waiter, more T-72s.
Put the spice, lay it on it.
Ранку, тепер видихаємо.
And with
We got
that,
that fool in the comments. Help yourself.
Man, get him! Dude, but anyways, that's the end of that clip. And great to see that Mandiar's birds are still working strong in the area around Krynky and helping to contribute to the high losses of the Russian armor in that area. We also got to see another 2 main battle tanks destroyed in the area of Krynky today as well. The first one I think we saw, but let me make sure. I'm going to be muting the techno game music. So let me make sure that first one we did see destroyed. The second one, however, which we're going to fast forward to right here, we didn't see in the last clip. And de boof. And that one was smoking. We didn't see that one blow up, however, but it was smoking, most likely going to burn out later. So out of all 3 of those videos, we got to see that 3 main battle tanks were destroyed around the area of Krynky today, specifically in the woods leading up to Krynky or on its western side. And it is showing that it appears that the VDV division has apparently held back and is creating a defensive position in Kherson, while the other brigade, near to the area of Kazachilahri, is attempting to try and uproot the Ukrainian forces that are inside of Krynky from its western side. Now, it appears to not be met with a lot of success. Losing 3 main battle tanks over 24 hours are significantly high losses for the armored units in that area, and it is showing that the Ukrainian defense is continuing to hold on at a very strong rate and has a firm holding of the town of Krynky, opening up the possibility for further offensives in the future, further on towards the Zelenskyy Sands, and then hopefully towards Crimea itself at the Armyansk Gap. But moving on from that, and down the way to the area of Rodinsk in Chelberta, we got to see that a Grad battery was blown up. And ooh, call it assault battery, because the Ukrainians beat the hell out of these guys. Check it out. We got a little seahorsey here. We can see the Grad battery. We're about to see it blow up, and it got hit. The ammunition goes nuclear.
Those trees were like instant charbroiled from that.
Man, instant vaporized. It's like instant coffee, but better, because this will wake you up a lot quicker.
Or instant sleep, instant nap, ZZZ for the Russians.
Man, sleep warmly. it's a sleep softly, sleep warmly. Grad.
Gotta say, I think the ammo explosion has the NyQuil beat.
Hi, kids. Who wants to drink the most NyQuil? Who wants to get closest to the Grad? You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, man.
Oh,
a piece of stuff.
Oh, that's another one. There's the first one over there, and here's the second one over here. There's the whole battery. And there y'all saw it. We got to see the assault and the battery. What do you know? And man, I bet you those Ukrainians had an intent to cause bodily harm or injury to them Russians, and therefore it does fall under a battery. Moving on from
that contact was harmful and offensive. They hit both bases.
Man, cancel them. But anyways, moving on into Kherson, we got to see a pretty unfortunate thing that the Russians have been attacking Kherson extensively with artillery and whatever they have available in the area, and it is causing a decent amount of damage to the city of Kherson. Of course, the Russians only know one thing, which is to lash out in anger whenever they are losing a battle, like in the area of the left bank. And we can see that they're taking this out once again on the innocent citizens of Ukraine in the city of Kherson. But that's the end of that clip, and hopefully the Ukrainian first responders are able to help mitigate the casualties as best as possible, and the Ukrainian forces on the left bank of the Dnieper River can fight even harder to make sure that there are less Russian soldiers around to be able to do something like that again. But with that, we're now going to be moving on out of the area of Kherson and on up into the area of Kyiv, because I have one cool picture to show y'all. Y'all like boats? You know, not like boats you take out on the lake, but you like boats. You like cool boats?
Let's see what kind of boats you got.
I like boats. Matthew, what kind of boat would you like to have if you could have a boat?
I'd like a yacht.
Man, a yacht?
I'd like a yacht. I want that Jeff Bezos yacht that you can't dock anywhere because it's too big.
Dude, that's a damn. All right, got some pretty big wishes. You know what I'd want? I want one of those like let's see, let me see if I can pull it up. Early 20th century yachts. You know, I gotta go old fashioned, but oh yeah, dude, that's the one right there. Actually, this one, I'd want that yacht.
Man, it looks like the Titanic if they kind of like went a little wonky with the design.
Dude, I think it looks cool, man. Like, and also there's this one. I think they look neat. Like me, honestly, me personally. But Speaking of yachts, the Ukrainians love yachts, y'all. They know folks like yachts. And y'all know what they did? They made themselves a cool yacht. Not one that we're looking at, but a cool one nevertheless. We got to see one of Ukraine's armored boats pictured today near the Overrun district in Kyiv at its mooring. Really cool because there's a couple of neat features about it. One, it has a like army type 3-tone, well actually a 4-tone camo on it, which is pretty unique. We can also see the Ukrainian naval ensign flying above it, and we can see that it has 2 turrets. And from what I can tell, these turrets look like they're either BTR-80 turrets that were mounted onto this boat, or there's some kind of a variant of a BTR-80 turret. I think that's pretty cool. Now, it's not like a yacht like we were looking at, but it's still a pretty damn cool yacht. You gotta admit it. You're cruising down this thing on the lake. I bet you're going to be getting a lot of attention from folks who want a yacht like that. And also, I like the little countermeasure dispensers that they have on top of this yacht. Pretty cool yacht.
I like my yachts with big guns, and this one does it.
Man.
This is like something Jeremy Clarkson would pick if you told him to go pick a yacht. He'd pick this.
Yeah, like he did that one time in Vietnam where he picked the American patrol boat or something like that. But I got to admit, this thing is just really neat. And of course, you know, a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, that isn't like a warship. That isn't a destroyer or a frigate or anything." Well, yeah, I mean, it's a riverboat, but it's incredibly cool to see some of Ukraine's riverboats because we hardly get to even hear about them much. So it's always cool to get a little picture of them here and there. And also with the big urban background and also that gray sky that just makes you think, look, an old Soviet city. It just really puts it all together where you just go, classic, absolutely classic. But moving on from that, it's time for us to get on from that little armored boat and the picture of it, and time to move on into the area of our location unknowns. And we just have so many interesting ones tonight. And I got to tell you, the first one is actually very interesting because we got to see the medics of the Ukrainian SBU in action. And the SBU is it's kind of like a blend of the FBI and the CIA's role in the United States kind of roll into one, and they're also a fighting unit of Ukraine. It's kind of like seeing FBI operatives or the CIA fighting in the front lines as actual combat units. It's a very interesting group as far as the war goes, and we also got to see how their medics are operating on the battlefield, sometimes detached from their units and just using medical detachments of the SBU to reinforce and fortify other units that are in heavy combat areas like Avdiivka or other places in the front line. This one we didn't know exactly where it was, so we put in the location unknowns. But Matthew, so many people have been able to vote tonight. What have they been saying?
Man, so many people have been voting. It's insane out here. I'm telling you. We're getting sick of voting. We're voting so much. But anyways, the first poll tonight says Slovakia says it will block Ukraine's accession into NATO as it would start World War III. And what are your thoughts? 66% said that's a bad move. Ukraine must be in NATO. 14% said unsure. 11% said it would, and that's a good move. And 9% said good move, but an alternative is needed. And one thing I will say is Ukraine has been trying very hard to get into NATO, and for a very long time, it seems to be the wise thing to do. But one thing I will say is it would certainly be a major escalation if Ukraine were to get into NATO, but I don't think blocking their accession is the answer. There's got to be a better solution here to prevent World War III from breaking out. But then again, I guess it begs the question, do you really think Russia would start World War III if Ukraine actually got into NATO, which at this moment, I'm not really sure. I think they're so worn down and depleted from the Ukraine war, it might be hard for Russia to do anything to anyone after it wraps up. So on this one, I'm actually going to have to take the cop-out answer and say unsure. And Enforcer, what say you?
I'm going to have to say I do not like the answer because everyone knows, and the NATO Secretary General Stoltenberg has already made it very clear that any kind of accession of Ukraine into NATO will not happen until the war ends. And that's been something that everyone has been on the same page about. So this isn't talking about stopping their accession into NATO right now. This is talking about stopping it well into the future. And I believe it's ascension, not accession. But stopping their ascension into NATO in the future. And that's
a session.
Oh, it is a session?
Yeah, it's a
Oh
session.
my God, dude, I questioned myself and I had it right the first time. But the accession into NATO is in the future. It's not now. And the fact that Slovakia is already trying to bar it is showing that they're probably going to do that even when the war is over. I see some people are actually crapping on the Slovakians in the chat, and they're like, who the hell are the Slovakians? Well, the Slovakians did provide practically, I believe it was 40% of their armored forces to Ukraine earlier in the war in the form of the MS-55s, which are in Ukrainian service right now, and used pretty heavily in rear line units. So Slovakia has helped out a lot in this war in Ukraine, but the fella who made that statement, I would say that that's not an appropriate statement. Bringing Ukraine into NATO is not going to create a third world war. Let me explain why the precedent is out there, why it wouldn't create a third world war. Estonia joined NATO, Latvia joined NATO, Lithuania joined NATO, Finland joined NATO, Sweden is currently joining NATO, Poland joined NATO, the Czech Republic and Slovakia joined NATO, along with Hungary, Romania, Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, I believe North Macedonia, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey. Actually, Turkey and Greece were around almost from the beginning of the alliance. But a lot of people joined NATO in the 90s and the 2000s. And I believe some of the Baltic states joined around 1995 for most of them. I think that's a pretty good running year to go off of for the majority of the Baltic states. And it didn't create World War III when they joined, because funnily enough, there's not really a lot you can do once someone joins NATO. What are you going to do? Go to war with NATO and end up getting steamrolled? Obviously not. So if the war ends, there's nothing that's going to create a third world war if Ukraine tries to join. The Russians, if the war has ended, have already put in everything they could have to try to stop Ukraine from doing that, and then failed. So it would really not make a lot of sense to say, now that the Russians have bled their army dry and failed at the war in Ukraine, and Ukraine has still survived to join NATO, we don't want to do that because a war could start and it could be World War III. Because that time has already come and gone nearly 2 years ago, and it didn't happen. So going off of that, I would say that that's not a smart move by the Slovakian government, at least on that statement. I'm sure that it's made with with good intentions, but ill-advised or ill-informed, and I'm sure that if people talk to them, they'll probably change their mindset. I'm not really into trying to bash people. I know this statement by Slovakia is completely against the premise on this channel that we have laid out for the entirety of the war, but you have to keep in mind, everyone, that you can't always go around and bash everyone and just bash them into the dirt when they disagree with you, because you're going to end up with no friends. We have to try and encourage the Slovakians instead of just bashing them, because bashing them is not going to get us anywhere. They're just going to continue to deny Ukrainian accession into NATO after the war. We need to encourage them to allow Ukraine in. And to be honest with y'all, if my inclination is correct, I'm sure the Slovakians are doing this not because they don't want Ukraine in NATO. They probably want some concessions that are going to help out the Slovakians in the end. You know, probably not the greatest thing to do, kind of a little slimy, but everyone does it at some point. So we probably need to go and ask them, what do we have to do, Slovakia, for y'all to get Ukraine into NATO? And I'm sure Slovakia is going to say something like, oh, we would like some, second lot or third lot F-16s. Could we have some? And we'll go, yeah, why not? Go ahead. Here's like 16 of them. Will you approve them being in NATO? Yes, we will. And then we go, okay, that's great. Now you're in. I
don't know, Enforcer, because the guy that made the comment, Robert Fico, hopefully doesn't give me a credit score, FICO, but the guy actually made the statement that he will never allow Ukraine into NATO, and as long as he has power, he will always veto the opportunity for Ukraine to get into NATO. So I don't think he meant this just in the short term. He meant this in the long term as well. He seems to be dead set on not letting Ukraine into NATO. So on that front, what was that?
But people do say things, Matthew, and sorry to interrupt you there, but people do say things that sound hard line, but it's not hard line, because remember when Erdogan said there will never be a day where I'll approve the accession of Sweden into NATO, and then that day finally came?
Yeah.
I mean, just because they say something like that, it doesn't mean that it's entirely out of the question that they might not change their mind in the future. I'm sure that this guy, if you sat there and gave him some kind of incentive, and the United States has plenty of incentives to give Slovakia, some spare F-16s, maybe some tanks, and for us, it's chunk change, to be honest with y'all. It's not going to be anything too much for us to give to Slovakia. Their armed forces aren't that large, but on the NATO side of things, we could go, you know what, we're going to approve the sale of this if you allow Ukrainian accession into NATO. Does that sound good? And then he'll be able to go to the public and go, y'all, I'm building up the size of the Slovakian armed forces. I'm making Slovakia stronger, making Slovakia prouder. And then people go, well, wait a minute, didn't that mean you had to let Ukraine in NATO? You go, yeah, but that's no big deal, because that's what he'll probably end up doing. So
I mean, he could be trying to get leverage for negotiation, but considering Slovakia has helped Ukraine in the past, it kind of seems a little weird to me that all of a sudden they would be so against Ukraine getting into NATO unless they had a legit belief, at least partially, that it might lead to such a significant escalation that a world war would break out.
maybe, but I've got to be honest, like the chances of a world war happening with Ukraine joining NATO, especially when the war would end, it's just so minute. It's almost like saying, we can't run this nuclear reactor because it has a possibility of melting down tomorrow. But the chances of it melting down tomorrow are like 0.0001%. It's just so small, it's hardly even accounted for. So, on that, like, it's you could make it make sense, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a stretch to me, in my opinion.
True. And also, a point just playing devil's advocate against the position. It's almost like Ukraine's like essentially a de facto NATO member at this point with as much aid as we've sent to their country. And even though they're not officially like, signed on the dot, they're in NATO and, all the formalities, they are getting a ton of aid from all the Western countries. So, rather than making it formal, I mean, what else really is there to, happen? Is Putin really going to launch nukes over signing a document? That might be a stretch.
Maybe, but we'll have to leave it at that. And you know what? I think it's better yet, rather than leaving it at that, tell us what y'all think in the live chat, because I'm seeing a lot of y'all bringing in very interesting points and topics about this, and I want to continue to hear about it, because y'all all have some really interesting stuff that y'all are bringing to the table. But Matthew, what is the next thing that everyone's been talking about?
So the next thing everyone's been talking about is the super chat questions, and we're moving on to that segment. And the first one we have of the night is from Sinful J, who throws in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, Sinful, for that very generous support. And it says, appreciate what you guys do daily, and long live the LSA, and please take a question from the live chat.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, Sinful J, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, a real OG, and I thank you so much for the support. It's been a while since we've seen you throw in a super chat, but it's great to see your name there, and thank you so much for appreciating what we've been doing. We always try our best to do this. We've been working hard behind the scenes to add a little bit more to the channel and what we're able to do, and I hope you all are going to enjoy it a lot, because we are very excited to get that out to each and every one of y'all. Also, we will make sure to take a question from the chat, but before we do, long live the Lee Spring Army, and thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping us to keep the thing running. Of course, the channel relies entirely on viewer support, and if it wasn't for folks like you who threw in support to this channel, we wouldn't be able to make it possible. We don't make a cent on our YouTube Give fundraisers. All of that goes to the nonprofits that are a proportion for that. We also don't make any AdSense or sponsor money. We run entirely on just viewer generosity. And I got to thank you, Sinful J, for being one of those incredibly generous viewers tonight and helping this channel to be possible, because I have to say this, and I cannot stress this enough, y'all make this thing possible through y'all's kindness and generosity to this channel. And so thank you so much once again. And what is the live chat, Matthew?
And the live chat question is going to go to Dreaming Historian. He says, who do you believe that the winter favors more at this point in time in the war?
I think the winter probably favors the Ukrainians at this point of the war more so than the Russians, because the Russians were the ones that started their offensives in the fall, and most of their offensives have not ended going on into the winter. And so the Ukrainians digging in before the winter came are in a much better position. Trying to make any new defensive positions during the fall, well, not the fall, but the winter months, is next to impossible because the ground is solidified so hard. There is no way to really dig any fortifications at this point. You kind of just have to work with the ones you had in the fall. The Ukrainians made some. The Russians made practically none because they're still conducting offensives. So right now, due to the weather conditions and also due to the preparations and actions that were already being carried out in the fall weather, we know that the Ukrainians probably have the upper hand at this point, at least during defensive battles. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much once again, Sinful J, for sponsoring that live chat, and also sponsoring this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. We can't thank y'all enough, and of course, during the Christmas months when support gets a little short for everyone, the support is greatly appreciated, and we are always just honored and completely blown away that y'all found this channel worthwhile to support, even during a time like Christmas. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next super chat is going to go to yet another longtime channel legend. It is the BC Skyman. He throws in a $50 donation as well. And thank you very much, BC, for that support. And also, it's good to have you back from that hunting trip as well. And he said, good evening, Enforcers and the LSA family. And glad to see everyone here tonight. And God bless everyone that is supporting Ukraine. And I met a U.S. lieutenant that is training Ukrainians in Poland. And he said Russia is building up heavy military in Kaliningrad.
Interesting. And I thank you for the support, BC Scamming, and sharing that with us, because from what we've heard on our end, we hardly hear anything about a Russian buildup in Kaliningrad. In fact, the British Ministry of Defense has been saying that the Russians are pulling forces out of Kaliningrad and somewhat drawing down forces inside of the oblast. But apparently, the U.S. intelligence is getting an entirely different picture, and I'll have to look into that and check around to see if we can find anything more about it. But beyond that, thank you for sharing that, because I'm going to look into that a little bit more and see if the British Ministry of Defense is correct or not. Maybe they're not in that instance, you know, and that wouldn't be the first time they're late to the party or possibly incorrect on something. But moving on from that tidbit, and I thank you for that, let's see. Glad to see everyone here tonight. I'm glad to see everyone here tonight, too. It's not doing that bad because, once again, you know, YouTube is doing its thing a little bit, and also the Ukraine war keeps on going, and so, you know, people start to move on to other things. I don't know what they're moving on to, though. It's like, what other calls? You know, it's like nobody can even talk about what's going on down here without YouTube coming and knocking their kneecaps out. And also, nobody really seems to be that interested in what's going on in Sudan. So it's like, where are these people going? Like, what are they going on to next to? But nevertheless, I do have to say it's wonderful to know that the Lee Spring Army continues to stick in here and continues to cover the news of the war in Ukraine, continues to be here every night, and also help out the Sunday fundraisers. And I also got to once again thank folks like you, BC Skyman, for supporting this channel and helping us make it possible, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be on air. And I have to say that so much because any bit of support is greatly appreciated by this channel, and we got to thank you so much for throwing in a very generous and kind amount of support, helping us to keep this thing rolling. Also, on top of that, welcome back, because you've been gone for a little bit, and I hope everything went well while you were over there having a little bit of a trip around Ukraine and even Poland as well, from what we're getting. I hope it was a great time. I hope you were able to help out a good deal and also get to experience a lot of the area over there. It's a really cool place, Eastern Europe, and thank you so much once again for being an old guard of this channel, and not only that, a channel legend helping this thing to stay going. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving right back into the frontline news and the location unknowns.
All right, and the last one of the segment goes to Historic Tasmanian, who puts in a $15 donation, and he did not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Mr. Tasmanian Devil, the historic one, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much, Historic Tasmanian, for the support in helping this channel to keep on running. You are, of course, a channel legend and been helping this thing to keep on rolling. I gotta thank you so much once again. While you didn't throw in a comment, the support does help us to keep the thing rolling, and if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And we gotta thank y'all so much once again, because so far our super chat list literally just has one more on it, and that's it. So, of course, I gotta thank you so much once again.
Wait, how do you know that?
Well, because I'm looking at it right over here from the viewer activity chart. It's just because I can see.
Well, hello.
Nick Lycos is the last one on the list, so we pretty much.
Hey, shout out to Nick Lycos, who put in a 2.
And it said, hello, sir, cheerio. And I guess we'll read it off right now. And so, oh, hello there, and cheerio to you. And thank you for the support of the channel as well. We got 4 questions, but nevertheless, I got to thank all 4 of y'all once again for supporting the channel tonight. Y'all are helping this thing to be possible. And of course, viewer support is the only way we're able to keep this thing running. And we greatly appreciate everyone who does take the time to support the channel and make this thing possible. But moving on from that and on into our location unknowns, we got to see a pretty interesting clip of the medics of the SBU in action. And here's the clip. And I will say, it shows some things, but nevertheless, it is still safe to show. We see the Ukrainian soldiers running up to what appears to be a knocked out MRAP or a BTR. And sadly, we're going to have to be muting it, but we can see that they're trying to treat wounded soldiers on the front line in some pretty precarious positions. We can see them showing how their ambulances are at work, how they evacuate the wounded, talking about how they handle their tasks as well in the unit. We see some of the wounded soldiers that have actually had their lives saved by the medics of the SBU talking about how the SBU helped to save them. We can see some surgery being conducted. Yikes. Pretty rough stuff. But nevertheless, luckily enough, that surgery was life-saving for the soldier, and he was able to make it out alive. Very lucky for him. And with that, that's the end of that clip right there, but of course showing a little bit of the works of the Ukrainian SBU's medical corps. Moving on from that, we can also see a interesting video put out by United 24, once again talking about how the Ukrainians possibly may be able to defeat the Russian forces during the winter months. Now, I do have to say this. We're going to have to watch this very closely because I swear that a video like this came out very recently. I checked, however, this video only came out about 9 hours ago, so it is brand new as far as today goes with its upload date, but it almost seems like we've seen something like this before, but we're going to make sure to check and see.
Winter is back. And again, this is a severe test for millions of Ukrainians, both for those who must be ready for blackouts and especially for those who defend our country in trenches. The war in Ukraine continues, and we are already entering a very difficult winter period for the second year. What has changed over the past year? How do you keep from freezing when war occurs in winter? And how does the cold influence combat? Explore these questions with United 24 Media. Many conflicts of the past were fought during winters. The war between the USSR and Finland was even called the Winter War.
Okay, now I'm going to have to stop it right here because now that we've gotten this close, I remember them talking about the Winter War. This apparently is a re-upload from United 24. A little interesting to note that because I remember us watching this maybe about a week and a half ago and seeing the exact same things talked about with the Winter War and how, you know, wars are fought in winter and it's always chilly and a little cold and everything. So this seems to me to be the exact same video, which is just incredibly interesting. But anyways, with that, we're going to be moving on from that, considering that it's pretty much a duplicate, and moving on to our next one, where we got to see, apparently, some Cuban volunteers in the Russian army. You know, the ones that were unfortunately sent to Russia to work, but then ended up working the front. So here's the clip.
Ребята, мы вас любим. Россия наша вторая страна.
That's the end of that clip. But hey, pretty interesting to see. Apparently, the Cuban volunteers are a little hype, at least for the moment, because they haven't been sent to the front line yet. Jerry, I got those Cubans, Jerry. Dude, imagine Kramer being a commissar in the Russian Federation. Putin, I got those Cubans, Putin. Oh, really?
You remember when he went down to the embassy down there to go bribe the Cubans to get some cigars or whatever?
Yeah, and then he ended up playing golf.
He was like, "That's illegal. That's illegal." Oh, it's not illegal, Jerry. It's just a little cigar. That's all. A little Cuban.
The Cubans, Jerry, Cubans. But anyways, moving on from that into the next clip, we also got to see some engineering training going down with an IMR-2M. Pretty cool little vehicle, pretty interesting, specifically made for the engineering role. Not really a lot else to show, but it was a cool vehicle, and I thought the pictures were pretty neat. But moving on from that into our last bit of location unknown news, we also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours. And while not being
oh my God! Do you see 3 more Bobcats, man? Are you seeing the same numbers I'm seeing?
Look at that, man! Shit.
Look at this. They got a cruise missile. They got troops. They got vehicles, tanks, artillery. My goodness, man! What are they thinking?
Man, they thinking good things with 890 Russian soldiers knocked out in the past 24 hours. Very impressive to see. Not only that, 23 armored personnel carriers were destroyed, along with 29 supply trucks, 16 main battle tanks, 16 artillery pieces, 17 drones, 2 MLRSs, and 1 cruise missile. All in all, today wasn't the highest day of losses we've seen, but it was still pretty decent, and showing that the Russians are continuing to take some pretty decent losses at the hands of the Ukrainian defenders, who are continuing to stop their offensives practically dead in their tracks and destroy really anything that rolled up into that front line area. Overall, they're doing quite well. And moving on into that front line direction in the northeast, we could see that in the direction of Kupiansk, they were continuing to rack up the casualties up here. The 14th Separate Brigade was actually able to take out a group of Russian soldiers moving down a winter road in a winter wonderland. Check it out. When you see the Russians getting up and getting ready to take a little gander down the street. But lo and behold, a mortar shell lands right in the middle of all of them, and it looks like all of them will be enjoying the winter wonderland.
He was crawling in a winter wonderland.
Why do you sound like Goofy? He was
I
crawling
don't know.
in
I
a
can't hold
winter...
a tune, so I figured let's imitate Goofy, and maybe we'll have some luck with that.
Man, dude, that lyric was absolutely goofy. But
Man, I was about to say, I'm about to sound real goofy when I say this, so I might as well go ahead and imitate Goofy.
And speaking of something goofy, we got to see that the Russians brought up an excavator right onto the front lines that ended up getting destroyed practically as soon as it got there. And we hear the Chad music playing in the background because destroying an excavator is Chad-like. We can see the drone coming on in. Yuck. And we can see...
Yuck.
Oh, man, and here it
I saw
goes.
that.
Boom!
Oh, boom, jagga jagga. He's an Igor.
And it looks like they got it. Yeah, boy. And I love to see it. Another Bobcat skid steer. I mean, an excavator actually destroyed. I was so used to saying Bobcat skid steers. I can see different kinds of equipment, and it's still a Bobcat skid steer to me. It's all the same. I swear, all the same. But moving on from that, we've got to get down into the area of Novomykilsk, where we got to see more Russian forces getting hit by an FPV drone. Baboof! Oh, wait, let me go back so we can see that again. There's the APC. Baboof! Blown up. Russians running, scared, crying for their mamas. That's the end of the clip, but it appears that that FPV drone was very successful at knocking out an armored personnel carrier and a couple of Russian personnel that were being carried by that armored personnel carrier. Unfortunately, we didn't get any videos from the Kremenna Forest. Those videos are actually kind of hard to come by on a day-to-day basis, and we haven't had any for the past few days. However, we are getting the idea that at least within this area, the 12th Azov Special Purpose Brigade is continuing to hold the line against the Russian Spetsnaz that is still trying to push an offensive towards Torskay and Liman, although it appears to be unsuccessful, at least over the past few months. We're going to be moving on now into the direction of Bakhmut and looking at our frontline map just to make sure that we're getting everything right. So over, and let me make sure to refresh this map because it was not updated when we went live, and I think it's updated now. They pretty much update literally the exact same time we go live, but over the past 24 hours, we have seen that the Russians have not made any ground in Bakhmut, but they have made a small slither of ground up here in these woods. Oh my lord, they've taken over a creek! But it's terrifying. The Russians have won the war, but nevertheless, there has been no front line.
The Russians have encroached on the Winnie the Pooh's 100-acre wood.
Winnie the Pooh, bam bam, Winnie the Pooh. Anyways, moving back.
You know, they
down.
said that Christopher Robin was a schizophrenic and he was imagining all the animals, and they all had like mental disorders, like you know, the piglet had the ADHD.
The pig, without the pig.
Like, the piglet,
dude.
We're talking about Putin here.
We got Winnie the Pooh, we got pig, suka blia, we got eel. But anyways, you know, Matthew, don't they have like a theory like that for like every single kind of kids cartoon out there? They're like, SpongeBob isn't actually a sponge. He's a child who died in the hospital and had some kind of a mental, you know. Like,
no. The big story around SpongeBob is that's actually like a real life or cartoon representation of Bikini Atoll after the bombs hit the area. So that's what happened under the sea. The mutant sea creatures turned into those you know, those abominations that were on Nickelodeon.
Man, I ain't gonna lie. I think I think it's just a cartoon, man. Like, I think it's just a funny cartoon about some sponges.
Maybe.
I mean,
that's right. Emma said Piglet has anxiety. That's right. That was the rabbit that had ADHD. Piglet was the anxious one.
Oh, that's how I feel. That's how I feel like all the time when I'm not running this channel. I'm like, oh, are we making the news good enough? But anyways, moving on from that. There has been no frontline movements in the area of Bakhmut, getting off the whole Winnie the Pooh thing. But moving on to the area of Zelenskyy, we got to see some Ukrainian soldiers possibly going on leave with little suitcases and everything. And the caption just says, Ukraine, period, current mood. I don't know what that means, but here's the clip. And apparently Bad Boys is playing in the background, so we're certainly muting that. But you see this guy's got a little travel case that he's using. He's just wandering around. You know, he's just doing his thing. Going on vacation, maybe going on extended leave, who knows? And oh, look at that, right there at the end. We got a little Scooby snack. T-72B turret burned out like a crisp in the middle of the tree line. Beautiful. Very beautiful. Moving on from that, also, B, I would tell you, depending on the condition of that Colt 1903, that might be a little pricey, actually, at $1,400. I think a fair market price for a 1903, and of course, there are some exceptions to that, but a fair market price would be somewhere in between $850 to $1,050 for an actual operational one that's in okay shape. One that's like in mint condition, unfired in its original box and everything, those can actually go for thousands of dollars, and it kind of just depends on what people are willing to pay. But on that one, $1,400, ooh, yikes, that would be a really expensive one right there. I'm not even going to lie. But moving on from that, and down into the area of Bakhmut, we also got to see Russian forces being hit by a drone from the airborne, which is still holding the line out there near Bakhmut. Check it out. Oh, look, they're doing the rolling thing in the manual. They're like, quick, roll, blitz, roll. It's not helping them. Like, they look kind of a little goofy down there, and they're not really moving far, so, you know, oh. Ay, caramba. It did not work for him. We can now see them dropping a bomblet into a snowed-up MTLB. And, man, that thing just got bricked up.
I mean, you know, the Russians must think that if they follow the manual to a T, then they can hold their employer liable, and then they can get workers' comp. So that must be why they're doing it. But surely the Russians know that rolling in a circle isn't going to save you from a falling bomb.
You know, that's an interesting point, Matty. Maybe they are trying to get workers' comp. I've never thought of it like that, but they never get it. They never get it, though.
They get the Lada, the white Lada.
Dude, they're like, if I roll around in circles like the company told me, I will get some paid leave. And then they go back to the desk and they're like, yes, I'm going home for like 2 months. And then like, you're going to Avdiivka. Bled. This is the opposite of what I was hoping for. But we also got to see near the area of Kalashkivka a couple of knocked out armor items that are showing that the battle is continuing pretty heavily in this area. We can see a knocked out Australian Bushmaster and also a Zizu APC behind it. Funnily enough, we've actually seen these very two vehicles before, and these are some Ukrainian soldiers walking by them. This Zizu APC was burning around, well, actually burned out around the time of late October, and we actually watched it on film from a Ukrainian soldier that was sitting inside of that tree line in front of the Zizu looking towards it. So we've actually seen these two knocked out APCs before. It's just that they're now walking by them again during the middle of the winter and kind of showing that same part of the battlefield again months later. Moving on from that and into the next clip, we also got to see further down and into the area of Avdiivka a frozen rifle. This is scary. This thing is a C7 rifle. It's what the Canadians use as their standard issue rifle, but apparently this one is Dutch. It got rained on, and then it was so cold that it froze the rain onto it, so it's got a sheet of ice over the entire thing. Pretty much, I would say it's not unusable, but it's probably going to be pretty tough to use. You're going to have to chip a lot of the ice off, most likely. But good luck on whoever got that thing rained on, because it looks like that thing is iced over pretty damn well. Maybe hold that over a fire, maybe that would help. Although that might start warping the plastic if it got too hot. But nevertheless, kind of a little tough. Let's see, and JV said, yeah, the guy is pricey, but I bought 13 weapons from it didn't like a million comes. I would tell you this, though, on that one, I think that one is such a high price, $1,400 for a 1903 pocket pistol. I would probably hold off. And also, I have been able to see that out there you can get 32 HCP for about, I think it's like 50 cents or less a round, which isn't really that bad when you think about it. You know, like when you get yourself into it, it's not that bad because 30-06 is like $1.30 these days around. But Well, then again, you're getting a lot for 30-06, you know, per round. Anyways, I would probably hold off on that one. You can actually get some really good deals on 1903 pocket pistols on Gunbroker. There are actually some auctions that nobody bids on those things, and they're not in bad shape. I think I saw one end with no bids on it, and like the starting bid to like bid in, it was like $850. So that was way below 1400. That's almost half the price, and it was in great condition too. But moving on from that, Frozen C7. Now that we're getting all gun nerd mode up in here, and by the way, you know, not to get you all hyped up or anything, but the first gun review video ever on this channel may come out this week. I'm not saying it.
Y'all know I got the whole initial edit sitting right here in front of me. I'm literally looking at the sequence in Premiere Pro. It's like it's ready to go. We've got a little few last steps to go, and that's about to be a banger.
Oh, and that thing is going to be banging. It's going to be banging and booming because I've seen it already, and it's very good. Like, we were able to get the presentation down pretty well, and I will have to say this. There are probably maybe one or two inaccuracies in the video factually that I stated, not to, like, let y'all down or anything immediately, but I was doing that entire monologue that y'all are going to see in the video. It's nearly 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes long. I did the entire thing with no script and in one take. So, if y'all see like one factual inaccuracy in there, just keep in mind I'm trying to remember 7.5 minutes of raw monologue in my head with no script, and making sure that I do not stutter at all, and trying to belt all of that out. So I think there was like one inaccuracy that I remember in there that wasn't great, but beyond that, it was really good sounding, and I was really happy to see it. Matthew did a great job editing, setting up the set, and we still have a little bit to go. We actually have to review the gun by shooting it, of course, and oh buddy, we've got something lined up for y'all. We have gone out of the way to try and make this as close to a Ukrainian service rifle as possible. Well, I even traced down the ammunition that is issued by the Ukrainians and the Russians, which is called 7-6, which is a form of armor-piercing round, and we're going to be shooting that out of the AK, although that stuff is corrosive, and the salts inside of the gunpowder will eat away at the rifle, so I have to get it cleaned immediately after we shoot it on the review, but beyond that, we are going all out on this review, and hopefully it'll be really good. But with that, it's now time for us to move on out of the battlefield of Bakhmut and even further south and into the area of Avdiivka, because we got to see that a Gyantsines was destroyed in the area. And also, just really quickly, because I see a lot of people asking, same channel? Great question, because I didn't answer that. It will be the same channel. It's going to be on this channel. It's going to be in our video section, so it's actually going to pop up ahead of the streams. Y'all might actually all get notified for it. I don't know. Hopefully y'all will, because I don't think YouTube is like knocking people that bad who do gun reviews. It's just people who do certain things on gun reviews get knocked. So anyways, here's the clip of the Galaxy S getting blown up. Poof! And there it goes. Ooh! That thing has got the ammunition cooking.
Boof.
And that's the end of the clip from the 59th Legion. And that's a Warhammer thing. But nevertheless, wonderful to see a Gyantsines destroyed. Another pretty high-end SPG, at least a large caliber SPG, knocked out. And once again showing that the Russians are not having a fun time of it. Moving on to the area of Prechestivka, we also got to see a T-80 undergoing some frontline maintenance on the battlefield. Here's the clip. Check it out. But anyways, we can see the little T-80 getting some repairs. It looks like something up with the tracks, maybe. And also, this caption says it's a T-72, but actually, it's a T-80. Let me explain why. Well, the T-72's engine bay does not look at all like the T-80's, okay? Let me go and find you a picture. Let's see. Let me get all the nerd voice so that way I can actually focus. Let's see. Well, are they going to show me a rear shot of the engine bay? Let me just type in T-72 engine bay. Engine bay. Man, they got to make it difficult, don't they? Well, let's back out of that. And here we go. There you can see the engine bay. You see that grill on the top where you can cook like some fine meats? Maybe Guga Foods will use it to cook up a whiskey-infused steak, which honestly, he cooks up some really interesting stuff. But anyways, look at that. Look at this. There's no grills up there on this engine bay. There's a vent back here. And that is the rear engine bay of a T-80. And so let me try and find y'all a picture that shows the rear engine bay of the T-80. Just so that way I can make sure to prove that this thing is a T-80. Come on. Come on. There we go. See, it's got that little vent, it's got the flat tops in the engine bay, and also the turret is clearly the turret of a T-80 with this little back attachment to it. This is like a T-80BV or some variant like that, but I have to nerd out like that, y'all, because I'd spent years of my life trying to figure out what tanks were what, and, you know, so I gotta make sure we get it right. It's not a T-72, it's a T-80. That one also appears to be a T-80, but we can't really tell too well. Anyways, that's the end of the clip. Very interesting to see that apparently that part of the front line is so inactive they're able to do some frontline repairs. But moving on to our next clip near Avdiivka, we also got to hear from the British Ministry of Defense, although their reliability is kind of being brought into question by BC Skyman's comment that a U.S. lieutenant made earlier to him, which may indicate that the British Ministry of Defense may not have the whole story in front of them. We're going to be taking this report for face value for now until we find out if the Ministry of Defense is correct or incorrect. They may be incorrect on the point that BC Skyman brought up, but in recent weeks, Ukraine has mobilized a concerted effort to improve field fortifications as its forces pivot to a more defensive posture along much of the front line. This follows Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky's call from late November 2023 for faster fortification in key sectors. In one part of the project, Ukraine has worked to improve defenses along its border with Belarus with Dragon's Teeth, razor wire, and anti-tank ditches as of mid-December 2023. Russia continues local offensive operations in several sectors, but individual attacks are rarely above platoon size. A major Russian breakthrough is unlikely, and overall, the front is characterized by stasis. And so the British are pretty much saying there's not really that much changing on the front lines on a day-to-day basis in large form like we saw in 2022. And they largely are correct. We're not seeing massive frontline changes. We are seeing things that are done that have great potential, like in the area around Krynky, where the Ukrainians are able to make small movements that will mean a lot in the future, but at the moment, it's just not really amounting to multiple square miles of ground taken over a single day, which would be considered decent advances. But with that, we've actually ended up covering all of the news from top to bottom, east to west, and so now it's time for us to get to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on day 665 of the war. And so without further ado, here is the Peach. Peach!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Короткий звіт за цей день. Ранок, селектор. Військові. Доповідь про ситуацію на фронті. Внутрішня ситуація. Безпека, доповідь від правоохоронців, ліквідація наслідків російського обстрілу Херсону, жорсткий обстріл. Відповімо ворогу. Доповідь ГУР, плани окупантів, наша протидія. Доповідь Служби зовнішньої розвідки України, тенденції найближчого часу, важливі наші операції, які ми готуємо. Окрема розмова по дронах, те, що на складах, і те, що потрібно на передовій, логістика буде швидшою. Працюємо і над тим, щоб ефективність застосування дронів, зокрема FPV, стала вищою по всіх напрямках. Це очевидний пріоритет держави і цілком конкретний спосіб берегти життя наших воїнів. Вдень багато нарад. Прем'єр-міністр, міністр оборони, дуже важливе питання комунікації щодо війни, нашої оборони, загалом фронту. Доступ на фронт журналістів. Зміни підготовлення інформації про фронт має бути більше. Вдячний усім, хто розуміє важливість цього і допомагає тримати нашу оборону, наші оборонні потреби у фокусі уваги у світі. Провів також нараду з міністром стратегічних галузей промисловості. Він координує роботу всієї команди, яка займається системою укриттів, їхньої готовності. За грудень хороші результати. Зараз щойно провів і міжнародну розмову, говорив з прем'єр-міністром Нової Зеландії. Для нас в Україні, для нашої міжнародної позиції абсолютно важливий кожен голос у світі. Абсолютно всі. Всі, хто цінує міжнародне право і готовий захищати його. Я подякував Новій Зеландії за незмінну підтримку України, за підтримку у розмінуванні, за підтримкою і санкцій проти Росії, за роботу над просуванням формули миру. До речі, зараз активно працюємо над організацією наступної зустрічі у форматі радників. Крок за кроком робимо нашу формулу миру формулою світової більшості. Вдячний усім, хто допомагає. Звичайно, щодня незмінно вдячність нашим воїнам, усім, хто б'ється заради нашої держави, усім, хто тренує, усім, хто лікує і рятує, усім, хто виробляє необхідну зброю, і усім, хто працює, щоб Україна могла вистояти, щоб наші воїни мали чим захищати нашу державу і незалежність. Обов'язково захистимо. Слава Україні!
And Herom Slava.
Oh, damn, that hit me like a truck. Slava Ukraine.
That was
Yeah,
a
I was
quick
like-
end on that one.
Yeah, I was like, dang. I was like, that was fast. But with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Hit me like a freight train, and just like the Russians are ending up getting hit by Ukrainian forces on the front lines like a freight train. But nevertheless, it's time for us to get into the next part of the stream. A very interesting and fun part, because we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. And we love to do that. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our final poll and question segment of the night, we have two more polls to address, and the first one is going to say, do you think that allowing Ukraine into NATO would force Russia to start World War III? 73% said no, Russia isn't willing to start it. Looks like 14% said possibly, but only time will tell. 8% said yes, NATO for Ukraine equal World War, and 5% said unsure. And on this one, I think that I'm going to go with the option that Russia probably isn't willing to start it. Like I said earlier, I don't think that formalizing Ukraine's membership into NATO is going to be enough to really put Putin in a position to have to fight the entire world. I simply don't think that's the case. And also, I don't really think they'll have the capability to even do it. And also, nobody's really willing to pull the trigger on the nukes either. So I think Russia is going to be a dead duck. But Enforcer, what say you?
What happened? Read the line.
What? Wah. Oh, anyway, the line said, do you think that allowing Ukraine into NATO would force Russia to start World War III?
Nah, I don't think it would. I think the Russians are a little, a little wuss when it comes to that kind of stuff. I don't know why it took me so much to figure out that word, but they're kind of wusses when it comes to that. They threaten it a lot, but I don't ever think they'll follow through. I think if Ukraine got into NATO, it would just be a huge diplomatic row. Probably would, scare a lot of people around the world, but it wouldn't turn into anything major, at least to me. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the second poll question says, North Korea says the upcoming military drills will be a declaration of war, and what are your thoughts on this? 74% said North Korea isn't ready for these hands. 14% said North Korea is ready to start a war. 7% said, it sounds a little serious, and 5% said unsure. And on this one, I got to tell you, this one sounds a little bit different. And I know that everyone's going to say North Korea says they're going to kill everyone every other week. And that is true. But Kim made a point to say that this time we're not joking around. And this time, if you pull off these drills near South Korea, which are near our country, we're actually going to do something about it and declare war. If he backs out of that statement, that would be pretty bold on Kim's part. That would actually make him look very weak. And on this one, I really don't see a way out for him. So I think he might be serious this time. And it's kind of hard to tell because he bluffs a lot. But this time, we ought to maybe look twice. But Enforcer, what say you?
So really quickly, I'm trying to find some background info on this really quickly to see if we can see him saying something like this before. And let's see here.
Oh, he's definitely said it before. Definitely.
I think every time, though, Matt, that he goes, on God, I'm not playing. I think he does that every single time. And I'm trying to see if he did the last time, because we did another one of these in March of this year. And I'm trying to see what he said back then. Let's see. Having no interest. Let's see.
Well, while you're looking for that one, I'll tell you the difference is this time is I had to go back and look to see what set Kim off so much this time to make such a hardline statement. He said that it's the nuclear drills that South Korea and the U.S. wants to hold together. That is the reason why he's wanting to declare war if they continue with that. And, just a few days ago, Kim had actually said that he wants to consider maybe launching some nukes if any provocation is made toward North Korea. He wants to go ahead and launch them before anyone else does to go ahead and get the first shot off. So, I'm not really certain about all the details around the nuclear drills, but I don't know why we're holding those, near South Korea. That doesn't seem to be a wise idea if we're just trying to keep peace. We can launch nukes from America and hit North Korea if we need to. Why are we holding them right there next to North Korea?
Interesting point. And trying to read through this, apparently we were able to find an article, as y'all can see, from a very unbiased source called the World Socialist Website. I'm sure that their take will be very neutral and not leaning towards the North Koreans whatsoever.
Wait a minute, go back up to the top real quick. It says International Committee for the Fourth International. Actually, it sounds kind of weird a little bit.
Well, you wanna know what the international is? It's the International Congress of Communists, pretty much. It's when it's when all the communists of the world get together to go talk about communist doings. That's what the International is. So when I saw that,
I just saw it says global class struggle. It says capitalism and inequality, and then it says Marxist library right there on the top.
Anti-imperialism, history. I wonder what's in the history topic.
This is a credible source, 100%.
Very credible indeed. It's indeed. Henry's like, are you serious? Yeah, I'm not kidding about the Fourth International thing. That is literally like if democracies of the world had like some democracy convention, the International is that for communists. It's literally like the Commie Convention, and they've had 3 of them before this. All of them ended up falling apart. This is the 4th one, and the 4th one ended up lasting the longest. But anyways. Also, by the way, if y'all just want to know a fun fact, oddly enough, throughout all of history, France was kind of like the mecca of communism. Like everyone would just go and meet in Paris at these communist internationals. And before World War II broke out, 30% of the voting majority of France actually voted communist. Just in case y'all want to know a fun fact, that's where kind of communism had its birthplace in any real form, because the Paris Commune that came to being after the Franco-Prussian War for just a few months was the first attempt at communism anywhere in the world. It's a very interesting topic. But anyways, we gotta get into this article because it's full of interesting stuff. Nominally, the war games claim to be defensive, repelling a North Korean attack and defending the capital Seoul, then counterattacking. However, joint planning under OPLAN 5015, agreed by the U.S. and South Korea in 2015, involves preemptive strikes against North Korea and special forces decapitation raids to assassinate its top leaders. Brutal. Under the South Korean military alliance with the United States, the U.S. has 28,500 troops stationed in bases in the country, along with warplanes and other military hardware on permanent high alert. Jinkies. Moreover, in the event of war, the U.S. military have operational control over the huge, heavily armed South Korean military and its 550,000 personnel. Those damned American imperialists. A transfer of command to South Korea has been under negotiation and foreshadowed for years, but has yet to take place because of those damned American imperialists. But we can tell that this. Wait a minute.
Where's this guy live that wrote this article? I bet you he lives in probably a Western country.
Hold up. Leon Trotsky. Wait a minute, dude, they're advertising something about Leon Trotsky. Wait, we gotta go look at their history segment now. I'm interested.
Wait, click on the person who wrote this article real quick.
Oh, wait a minute. Where was that?
Right there. Click on him and see where he lives real quick.
Let's see.
Australia. Seriously, Australia. Australia's been known to be communist for decades, you know. He just loves Australia for its communist values.
Listen, I gotta say this, y'all. I mean, whatever your political beliefs are, never be a part of an affiliation that is a part of the International Committee of the Fourth International, or a Nazi party or something like that, or a clan. Never become an affiliate of any party like that, because they're always going to be on the farthest extremes. They're usually filled with like weird, crazy people. I'm not going to lie. Try and be down the middle. The American way is actually largely down the middle compared to everyone else. Don't be an extremist. But anyways, let's go look at their history segment. Oh, buddy. Oh, this is going to be something. Let's see. We got on the 50th anniversary of the Chilean coup, lessons of a revolution betrayed. 80 years since the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which, by the way, that was a communist uprising that got crushed because the Soviet Union left them to die, but I'm sure they didn't write the article that way. Let's see here. What else? NATO summit in Vilnius. War plotting at the site of a historic crime. Gee, these guys are on the right side of history when they make NATO sound like the evil guys right now. Leon Trotsky and the struggle for socialism in the 21st century. Apparently a struggle not fought well enough because they're the butt of jokes. Let's see. Gary Tyler, then and now, from class war prisoner to artist. Oh boy. Goodness. Let's see here. Geez.
Everything's about Leon Trotsky everywhere.
Dude, Leon Trotsky is the communist version of Colonel Sanders, man. He literally just looks like an off-brand Colonel Sanders.
Do the socialists not believe in barbers and haircuts?
Nah, nah, man, they don't.
They might want to invest in that. A little bit of a common barber, a little bit of hair work. That might do something good for them.
Dude, I gotta tell you, man, I would seriously ask this guy, hey, do you know how to like put chicken into a boiler, like a pressure cooker or something? Because this man looks like he's about to make a Kentucky Fried Chicken happen. Like, anyways, in case y'all didn't know, Trotsky was a big communist revolutionary during the early times of the Soviet Union and was kind of a little popular when Lenin was in power. Then when Lenin died, Stalin took power. Stalin wanted to get rid of everyone who was a threat to his power. Trotsky was especially one of those people. Trotsky fled to Mexico, and then he ended up getting assassinated, I think in the mid-30s, by the Soviet Union in Mexico City, I think sometime around 1936. Like, they just butchered the guy. They gunned him down at the doorstep of his house. But nowadays, he's, like, worshipped and everything, you know, oh, what a visionary, but, you know. If you ever listen to the guy was like advocating for like a bloodbath. He was like, we need to kill everyone who stands in the way of communism, and we need to dominate the entire world through force of arms to bring communism to them. And that was his kind of like a mindset. And also, long live the Fourth International. You can't make the propaganda on this side any more serious than it is right now. Anyways, their history section is not really history. It's just more so, you know, socialist, or more so not really socialist, more so just communist history. But anyways, moving on from this article, I can't find it. No, I'm not playing from Kim Jong-un from earlier. I'd probably have to look around a little bit more. But the one thing has changed. Matthew is right. Something has changed. North Korea recently this year actually changed their nuclear doctrine from being a retaliatory doctrine to a preemptive doctrine, which is pretty wild because they're the only one in the world who does that. The Russian Federation has a defensive nuclear doctrine, meaning that they'll only fire their nukes when fired at. The United States also has the same, along with Britain and France, and also India, Pakistan, and China. North Korea is the only one, and they just did it a few months ago, where they don't have a doctrine where they respond to a nuclear attack. They make the nuclear attack happen. So going off of that, it is a little concerning that they would say that, given that point. But at the same time, we put our nuclear weapons in places like South Korea to send a message to people like North Korea. Sure, we could nuke them from the United States. It would take about 15 minutes. The nuclear weapons we have in South Korea can end up hitting the North Korean capital city, I think, within like 3 minutes. So the warning that they would have from that launch would be a lot shorter. And that's really the point that we put them there. So with that,
what's North Korea got, like 1 or 2 nuclear missiles at this point? Because they've shot a few off in tests, so I think they've gone down to just a couple.
I think they probably have, like, I think the number was like, right now, it's somewhere around 4 intercontinental ballistic missiles, and then they probably have a handful of tactical or medium range or intermediate range ballistic missiles or something along those lines. Those intermediate range ones are the ones that South Korea and Japan worry about the most, because they have the range to strike anywhere within Japan and also South Korea. But we worry in the United States about those 4 intercontinental ballistic nuclear missiles they have, because those can end up striking about as far into the United States as Kansas and northern Texas, at the very edge of the the circular range that this nuclear missile has. So that's why we're concerned about that kind of stuff here, because they could strike about half of the landmass of the United States if they wanted to with those 4 nukes. But the South Koreans and the Japanese are incredibly concerned, because they could be stricken by really any of North Korea's nuclear weapons if they ever decide to preemptively strike. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll question for the night. So with that being said, we're moving into our super chats yet again. And starting off first, we have one from Walter A. Lakota Jr., the channel legend. He throws in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, Walter, for that support. And also, it's good to see you once again. And he says the famous catchphrase, Aloha, the Enforcer Matt, and LSA from OG Ellison Bosun,
baby!
It seems that right now, the winter offensive is looking to favor the Ukrainians, and it seems Russian artillery barrels are probably getting barrel fatigue. And aloha.
Anchor emoji at the end. But nevertheless, Hello to the OG Ellison Bosun, and thank you so much for supporting this channel tonight and helping us to keep this thing rolling. To address what you're saying, I actually addressed this, I think, in a live chat that was sponsored recently, and I would agree with you completely. I think the winter offensive is certainly favoring the Ukrainians because they were already in a defensive battle in the fall, and the winter usually contributes greatly to a defensive battle more so than an offensive one. And so I think the Ukrainians are certainly on the winning side as far as the battles are going right now, just on the weather side of things. I also would agree that it does seem that Russian artillery barrels are probably getting barrel fatigue. We've seen some indications of that in a few video clips here and there. But not only that, we've also noted that apparently there's a rumor going around that the Russians have run out of SPGs, which are self-propelled guns, or something along the lines of like a Crab or a Caesar SPG for Ukraine. And if that's true, that means that every Russian SPG being lost right now is just, slowly whittling away at the self-propelled gun units that the Russians have at the moment. So going off of that, I would agree with you on both of those statements. I think that the Ukrainians are winning the defensive battle, and not only that, I think that Russian artillery barrels are probably getting worn out, or they're probably running out of artillery at a pretty decent rate to the point that you're nowhere close to even getting them replaced. Also, I have to thank you so much for supporting this channel tonight, Walter, and helping us to keep this thing rolling. It means a lot to us that folks support this channel because the largest amount of people support the Sunday fundraisers, and it's unbelievable to see that every single weekend. But a very small amount of people support the channel, and that's really the only way we keep this thing running. And we have to thank each and every one of y'all who do go out of y'all's way to support the channel, because y'all make it possible for us to put all of our time and effort, pretty much every waking day, into covering this news and making sure that those fundraisers are possible. And so thank you so much once again to all of y'all who support the channel and making it possible, because y'all are what make the Sunday fundraisers available, so that way we can raise unbelievable amounts every single Sunday, and you'll also make it possible for us to be on air every single day, including the Sunday fundraisers. So thank you so much once again, Walter. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And moving on to our next super chat, we have one from Marion Deemer, also a channel legend, by the way. It goes without saying, Marion is a big channel legend, and they put in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, as always, for that support. And she said, Slava Ukraine. And I say, Herom Slava, Herom Slava, Herom Slava.
And Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much for the support, Marion Deemer, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who make this thing possible. And I gotta thank you so much once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Marion, who have been here forever, and I cannot state that enough, you have been here forever. And I gotta thank you for supporting this channel again, because you're making it possible. And also, not only that, you're helping us to continue to cover the story of those brave Ukrainians who are heroically fighting every single day on those front lines to keep Ukraine a liberated and free nation. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're probably moving on to the next one, but before we do, Axel K said, have you decided on whether to open PayPal as an option? We've been talking about that in the background. Sadly enough, we've been so busy, we've not been able to implement a change to how this channel's revenue system works. One thing that we were kind of considering, though, is just opening up the Patreon and putting that link in the stream description, because it is already in our video descriptions, all of them from what I understand. And so we were kind of like, if y'all want to support us, Patreon has a pretty good support policy. I think it's something like 92% of the support that is given over Patreon we receive, if I'm remembering that number correctly. So we were thinking about possibly doing that. And not only that, being on Patreon, considering our gun review videos are pretty much going to be funded through Patreon exclusively, because we're planning mostly on YouTube limiting AdSense on those videos, because we do run ads on videos, but we never do that on a stream or run a sponsor on a stream either. We know that we're probably only going to be able to support the gun review videos through Patreon, and that would give you all the ability to support the Ukraine war news and also support our gun review videos at the same time, and really just support the entirety of the channel and all of the projects that we're doing. We've considered that and thought about that a good bit, and we were kind of wondering if y'all wanted to see that in the description or not, because that's kind of up to y'all. We're, thinking about it. We may end up doing that anyways, because a lot of y'all seem to like Patreon. We've ended up getting a couple of new members on Patreon already, And the folks who are there are appearing to enjoy the new photo shoot. And we're planning on making sure that our page is alive and active all the time there. I'll be trying to respond to everyone there that's posting or commenting anything. So hopefully, hopefully y'all will like that if y'all want to. And I see some of y'all going, yeah, that's it, we want it. Let's see. And so if y'all want it, I can actually just throw in the link in the description right now. And if all of y'all want to go over there, y'all can. I think the minimum subscription, you don't have to get a subscription. Like, there's a free membership, but I don't think it can access anything. The lowest membership is like $3 a month. It gets you access to most everything, I think. But beyond that, if y'all want to see it, and I'm trying to see in the live chat if y'all want to see it, or if y'all don't, I'll throw it down in the description. And it looks like, trying to see a little bit better of a scale of the public of the Lee Spring Army, and looks like a lot of y'all would like to see it. So I'm just gonna go and throw it on in, and let's see here. Let's see, we can connect it to our YouTube apparently. Cool. Well, actually, it's already connected. But let's see here. Can we just get a link to this thing?
I'll put it in the live chat if you're looking for it.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, for real.
Let me go grab
no
it.
cap.
Copy the link address, and let me go put that in the description below. And so I'll put it right here. Support us on Patreon. That's the first time this is ever going to be in the description. And paste. Oh my lord. That actually doesn't show up as a normal URL over here. This shows up as a redirect. So let me see if I can get that changed. I'm sorry, everyone. I know this is taking up a little bit of time, but please bear with us because I will be trying to get this all...
You should just be able to paste it and put a space behind it, and it should create an automatic hyperlink.
Let's see here. No, that didn't work. So let me see if we can go to this. Let's see, patreon.com/the enforcer. This should work. There we go. Copy. Let me see if this will work for me. Paste. And there we go. Looks like it works. So on my end, Matthew, it's just patreon.com/the enforcer, and it looks like that works.
Oh, but that's even better.
So let's see if we can get that up. Let's see if we can get that up and running, yeah? So let's see here. Let me go back again and try that. I'm so sorry, everyone. I know this is taking up a little bit of time, but we want y'all to be able to do everything y'all can. So support us on Patreon and paste. Oop, that didn't paste right. Hang on. Everything's going wrong. Why? Why? But anyways, save. And so now y'all can see the link to the Patreon in the description below. So if y'all want to go support us there, y'all can. And y'all be able to access everything that we put up on Patreon. And so with that, hope that does address that well. It looks like a lot of y'all wanted that. And also, why the hell did GW Nord's super chat get deleted by Nightbot? What was it?
It was deleted by Night. Wait a minute, hold on. Let's see here. That's weird. It came in with no message at all, and then it said message deleted by Nightbot, and it says number 1 on it. That's weird.
Huh.
GW, send that to me in the live chat if you could.
Send it to him in the live chat if you can. We would appreciate that.
Excuse me.
Bless you. But with that, I hope that does address the whole Patreon side of things fairly well, since y'all asked what about the PayPal. We don't really know about the PayPal yet, but we will put the link to the Patreon, and it should take you directly. And let me check. Let me just double check to make sure that it will take you to the Patreon, because I want to make sure that that's all set up correctly. We're not doing anything crazy that flings you to some weird far-off corner of the world. There's Matthew sneeze on stream. I just heard that. But let's see. I click on that.
I heard it too.
And it takes us directly over here. So yeah, it does work. Y'all can get on Patreon that way. So with
Man, I was just looking at that photo shoot, the FMP90. Which, by the way, if you're curious, we didn't take that with our like high-end cameras we're using to shoot the video with. I actually took that with my iPhone, and those photos like turned out excellent. Like I was just like thumbing through the photo shoot, thinking, "Wow, that's hard to believe that was taken on our studio in there. It's like professional."
Oh, real professional, super professional. But with that, hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next super chat is gonna go to D Henry 81, who throws in a $50 donation in Canadian monies. And thank you very much, D Henry, for that support. That is his first time ever throwing in a super chat. And huge shout out to my Canadian friends out there as well. And also, D. Henry, we appreciate that support. He says, hello from Ottawa, Canada. He says, a longtime viewer and first time chatter, and you guys wreck, and you guys rock. And he says, thanks for carrying the torch on the Ukraine front, and you guys do an amazing job. And keep it rolling, baby. Keep it rolling. LSA.
Hey, let's get it. LSA. LSA. And thank you so much for the support, D. Henry, and throwing in your first super chat ever, and also being a Canadian viewer. We have some amazing friends from Canada. They're proud to be Americans, but nevertheless, they are from Canada, and they are some of our best friends. In fact, I think they are probably our best friends. But nevertheless, I got to thank you so much once again for being one of our longtime viewers. I've seen you in the live chat a great deal, and I got to thank you for supporting this channel for the first time, because support to the channel is something that we rarely ever try to like hype up a lot, and we, you know, of course we thank everyone for the support and always tell everyone how important the support is, but we never try and make people support the channel like they do like we do with fundraisers. And it means a lot to us that folks who I have seen, like you, who support the fundraisers, are helping this channel to keep rolling, because, you know, it's something that I never try and say this way, because some people take it as us trying to hold the channel hostage off of this, but it isn't. The viewer support is something we must have in the end to be able to keep the channel running, because unlike any other channel where they have like a million ways they monetize it, we only have the one, and it's through the super chats. And now it's going to probably be a little bit through Patreon too, but still mostly through the super chats. And without people who support this channel, we wouldn't be able to make it to the Sunday fundraisers. So some people these days, they go, oh, I'm just going to support the Sunday fundraiser. And that's entirely on them. And good for them that they support Ukraine. But over time, if everyone decides that they're just going to support Sunday fundraisers, we may not be able to keep the channel running at all to be able to get to Sunday fundraisers anymore. And so I get to thank everyone, including you, D. Henry, for supporting this channel and helping us to make this thing possible, because you make it possible for us to do everything that makes everything else possible through your support. And so thank you so much once again. And thank you for saying that you appreciate us carrying the torch for Ukraine. We try our best. We work as hard as we possibly can to try and make sure that we get this news out each and every day. It is our priority on this stream, and we've never let anything get in the way except for sickness, and that was only twice. My sickness of the plague and Matthew's sickness of the plague. But thank you so much for being a huge admirer and supporter of this channel and helping us keep this thing rolling. And of course, LSA! And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is going to go to Monsieur Gaston, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Monsieur, for the support. He says, for the ammo fund.
And hey, thank you so much, Monsieur Gaston, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I love to hear that you are supporting the ammunition fund. I thank you so much for that. And I thank you incredulously, because folks like you are going to make it possible for us to be able to get access to 5.7 rounds, which are a little pricey, and the P90 shoots them. Also, I did go over a little bit of detail on the video that will be coming out about the 5.7 round and where it came from. And one thing that we were thinking, we're going to make the main reviews on YouTube, but other things like cleaning the guns, maybe Q&As about the guns, we're probably going to start doing those over Patreon. So that way we aren't like just clogging up the YouTube with loads and loads of videos, and maybe some that people don't want to see. And the more niche content that some of y'all will like will be on Patreon instead. So hey, hope to see you there. And also, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to GW North, who puts in a $20 donation. And this was the super chat that was absolutely stewed by the Nightbot, and I have no idea why. But GW North, thank you very much for the support. And it said it should have been anonymous. And it's for the Cult of Matt Tabernacle Fund. And I actually had to look up what a tabernacle was, because I wasn't quite sure. It's a choir. No, it says right here, it says, in biblical use, a fixed or movable habitation, typically of light construction, or it's a meeting place for worship, used by the Protestants or the Latter-day Saints, aka the Mormons. So apparently they meant the first one. So a movable habitation. So apparently, it's a tent, I think. But anyways, I must say the Cult of Matt does need a good tent, because we have to meet somewhere, and you obviously can't meet inside of a building because Colts have to meet in tents or pavilions for that matter. But anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
First off, I have to say thank you for supporting some Cult of Matt materials. Everyone loves the Cult of Matt. And of course, I also have to thank you for the support to this channel and helping the Enforcer to keep on rolling on air. It means a lot to us, and of course, I thank you so much once again for making this channel possible and also making the Cult of Matt continue to survive. Of course, all those things are very important, and I thank you so much for making them possible. Also, Christian Cruz said, did you guys get the blue tip armor-piercing round for the 5.7? No. We got, like, the target practice rounds because they're cheaper. Because see, the blue tip ones, I think, are, like, 30 cents more a round, if I remember what I found correctly. And I was like, ooh. I was like, we are going to go broke, and I'm going to cry. So I was like, we have to get something that is within the budget. Otherwise, we will not survive the tax season. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And once again, supporting the Cult of Matt materials. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also if you support the Cult of Matt, put an LSA in the live chat because you got to throw in and rep your support for the cult. But anyways, moving on to our next one, we have a $20 donation from BC Skyman. Once again, the channel legend, and thank you, BC. We appreciate that support very much, day in and day out, and you help to keep the channel running big league. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you for the support, BC Skyman, throwing in that 20, and also putting thank you for being you and the pair being a weird narcissist. Yeah, dude, it's a pair again, but nevertheless, I thank you for the support, BC Skyman, because we love to see that pair. We love to get a little laugh at it being a narcissist in the mirror, and we also thank you for being an old guard of this channel and a channel legend, helping this thing to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And put an LSA in the chat for the Cult of Matt, baby. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one is going to go to Keymaster, who puts in a $10 donation as well and does not leave a comment. But the Keymaster is the master of keys, and also he is helping to keep this channel running as well. So thank you very much, Keymaster, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you again?
And thank you so much, Keymaster, for being the master of the keys, and not only that, being the master of the keys to support to this channel. I thank you so much once again, because folks like you make it possible to keep this thing rolling, and of course, I thank you so much greatly, once again, for helping us to make this possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Butchie777, who throws in a 10 and says, for the Christmas bonbon fund. And I must say, I'm glad that fund is getting replenished because my bonbons are getting low in the bucket over here. But thank you very much for that. They said, you are like the cream in the morning coffee. And thanks for the BS-free news, the comedy, the sarcasm, and the voices. And please take a live chat question.
And thank you so much for the support, Butchie777. And thank you for supporting the Christmas Bonbon Fund. We love those strawberry bonbons. We can't get enough of them. And we're going to become diabetic from them probably. But that's something we'll have to worry about like years down the road. Nevertheless, thank you for the compliment of saying we're like the cream in your morning coffee. We've got to thank you for that. That's incredibly kind of you. And with thank yous, we thank you greatly. And also, thank you for enjoying the way we cover the news. Sometimes we have people come in here who want to tell us how to try and run the news. And I got to thank folks like you, Butchie777, for enjoying the way we run it and also supporting us so that way we can keep running it this way. It means a lot to us, and it just is wonderful to know that there are so many people who enjoy the way we cover the news instead of acting like they have to change the way we cover the news, or other, you know, well-do virtue signalers out there who act like, you know, how we cover the news is wrong while their smug way of covering the news is right, although they get almost everything wrong in the meantime. And so thank you so much once again, Butchie777, for the support, and we will make sure to take a live chat. And so, what do we have for the live chat?
All right, so the live chat question is going to go to Derek Rose fan, who says, do you guys think that Ukraine will be able to make any gains? And if so, where, when, and how? And also, can't live chat tonight. My parents are asleep. Love y'all. LSA.
And I thank you for the support. Nay, that's okay. I completely understand. And also, to answer your question, I think they're going to be making gains in the Krynky area near the left bank of the Dnipro River. I don't think there's a lot of potential anymore for offensives in the Zaporizhia region or really anywhere in the northeastern or central Donbass regions. So I think the left bank of the Dnipro River is probably where we'll see the Ukrainians have the most potential going on in the future. But I think it's not going to be that large. I could honestly see them making it to the very edge of the Zelenskyy Sands by February of this year, well, this next year, but I don't think it's going to be much farther than that, at least at the moment, because it appears that right now we have moved on from the era of the War of the Frontier, like we saw in France in 1914 and early 1915, and we're starting to move on into that World War I era where victories are measured in feet instead of miles. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much for asking such an interesting question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one is going to go to Sick Lid, who throws in a $10 donation. And thank you, Sick Lid, as well for that support. And he said for the cooking show.
And thank you so much for the support of the cooking show, old boy. And thank you, once again, for helping this channel to keep on running quite indubiously, my boy, quite indubiously. And also, thank you for wanting a cooking show. We kind of thought about that, but I've got to be honest with y'all, I've rarely ever cooked. I mean, I can cook up a mean grilled cheese. I can cook up a sandwich. Which means like getting out the cold cuts and just slapping them on a sandwich. I can do stuff like that, but cooking, I've never really had the time to do. I kind of just like eat food out or, you know, like microwave something from the grocery store. But nevertheless,
anyone can cook.
That's it, dude. I'm like that part of the movie where he goes, Gusteau's frozen foods. that is my part of the movie. The other
or that part of the movie where the chef said, "Forget that crap, man. Nobody can cook except for me."
Oh, man. Dude, you crack me up, man. You really do, man.
I'm telling you, man. These jokes are just top notch.
Man, dude, close your eyes, man. Close your eyes, man.
Close my eyes?
Yeah, close your eyes, man. What do you see?
Nothing.
That's my world without you, Matthew.
Damn, that was deep.
Anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. But thank you so much once again for the support and telling us that you want a cooking channel. We probably wouldn't be able to do it, but we'll give it a try. I mean, I could cook up like a grilled cheese like 90 ways. I'll tell you all this, I can probably cook up a grilled cheese better than Gordon Ramsay could, if y'all have ever seen that video. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who throws in a 5 and says, take a live chat question. And we shall, CK Bold, and thank you very much for always putting in that consistent super chat. And the live chat question goes to Old Buzzard. The Old Buzzard is here once again. He says, y'all covering the rats in the Ruski trenches?
Oh, I wish we could. Sadly, all the videos that come out about that are so graphic, we would never really be able to get away with showing them on air. That's the honest reality of why we never covered it, but I wish we could, because it's such a bizarre thing. If y'all don't know, rats are overrunning the Ukrainians and the Russians on the front lines right now. It's literally turning into World War I with the rat situation. The rats are getting incredibly large because they're getting gorged on, you know, corpses and food that's left around and garbage. And also, there's endless amounts of them. It's an endless horde. And so it turns out, apparently, these rats are able to carry some kind of a disease, and they're starting to infect Russians with this disease. And not only that, they're getting in everything. Like, I saw a video, we couldn't show it on stream, of the Russians starting up a BMD inside of a warehouse. And when they turned it on, Matthew, it literally was spewing out rats for like a whole 3 minutes out of the exhaust. Yeah, and they were like trying to smash them off the side with the butts of rifles and stuff. Like, it's insane. The Ukrainians and the Russians have gone to war crime levels to try and deal with the rat infestation issues, and it's not ending. It's getting worse as time keeps going. And
that rat bite disease is spreading like crazy too in the Russian ranks.
Yeah, it's horrendous what's going on with the rats. I wish we could cover it more on this channel, but sadly, most of it's so graphic, YouTube probably wouldn't like us covering it, and they would probably try and, you know, knock us for it. So I wish we could cover it, because I've been paying attention to that on the medicinal side, well, the medical side of a war. It's a horrendous kind of an epidemic that's happening with the rats, but sadly, it usually gets very graphic.
I wonder if it's going to go back to this like straight up plague being spread by the rats, because if it starts like, you know, becoming like so common that the rats are everywhere, they can probably pick that back up somehow. I don't know how that works, but, you know, the rats were the plague carriers back in the day.
Possibly. Actually, funnily enough, the plague is easily defeated just by like basic hygiene, like washing your hands and stuff. I actually
the Russians are going to die big league.
Yeah. Ukrainians, they'll be probably okay. Russians, they're dead. Like, they're all dead, even inside of Russia itself. Like, Voronezh wiped out. But nevertheless, I wish we could cover it more. But sadly, like I think I've said this about 3 times, but I want to make sure to cover it again. Like, the way the rats are dealt with is so horrendous. Like, I've seen many videos of how the rats are dealt with, and I've seen both the Ukrainians and Russians kind of go to the same things. It's like, Like they'll get like popsicle sticks and they'll end up, you know, recreating the crucifix, if you know what I mean. Like it's pretty bizarre what they're doing to these rats, because apparently the hatred for these things have just risen sky high as the war's gone on. They're not cute anymore. They're just absolute pests. So sadly, we wouldn't be able to cover it too much, but we have been hearing about it, and it is an epidemic of unbelievable proportions across nearly 500 miles of the front line. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Hector Rodriguez, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Hector, for that support. He says, I have a question. What does it say in Ukrainian at the beginning of the stream over the flag?
Let's see. Over the flag. I'm trying to think about what part that is. Do you know what part he's talking about, Matthew?
Oh yeah, over the flag.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me go back here and let me see what it does say. So let's see. We'll all just watch this together. Well, actually, I'll just unmute it so y'all can hear it. Man, what an anthem. What an anthem.
I'm telling you, man.
Oh, it says Slava Ukraini Hurom Slava, and it just says it in Ukrainian Cyrillic. So that's what it says on the flag at the beginning of the video. So, with that, I hope that does answer your question fairly well. And also, thank you, Hector, for asking that question. It's a great question because a lot of people don't know how to read Ukrainian, and I myself was one of those people at the beginning of the war. Kind of picked it up over time. So I can read basic things in Ukrainian, but most of the time, being completely honest, it still eludes me what a lot of the stuff means, because I still can't read it all too well. But nevertheless, thank you for the support, Hector, and asking a really good question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have a $2 super chat from DT, also known as Donald Tusk. But no, not really. It's just
Mr.
DT.
Tusk.
But anyways, thank you very much, DT, for that support. He says, "What is the failures rate due to beat down?"
Beak down. It's beak down. Everyone put your beak down. And no, I don't want to Lego Fortnite, you damn Epic Games. I installed the Epic Games launcher recently, everyone, and this thing keeps harassing me. I don't know how to turn off the notifications. Leave me alone! But anyways, what is the failure rates due to breakdown? Sadly, we don't really get a lot of data on that. And also, failure rates from breakdowns really depends on what system we're talking about. If it's a tank, it's probably actually kind of like a higher rate of breakdowns, probably, I would say, maybe like 10% or less. With firearms, it's probably lower than that. It's probably like 2%, 1% chance of breakdowns. But sadly, I wouldn't really know, because we've never really gotten any exact hard numbers or figures on that kind of stuff throughout the whole war from anyone, for that matter. So sadly, due to just a lack of data, we wouldn't really be able to talk about that too much. But with that, I do thank you for the support and asking a great question. It's just that unfortunately, we don't have that kind of data yet. That's usually like historical level data that would come out maybe 15 years, 20 years after the wars ended. And that data and information didn't really matter that much on the strategic end. So that's something that could be answered in a World War II scale, because the data certainly is out there. But for the war in Ukraine right now, most countries would probably consider that to be a national security issue, to talk about the failure rates of certain weapon systems, because it would help their planners, their adversaries' planners, to plan a lot more efficiently and effectively, knowing those numbers at an exact ratio. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And with that, we are through with our super chats for the night. So thank you all once again for all the support of the channel, and we appreciate it very much. And we're now moving on to our Morse code decoders of the stream first. And tonight, we had almost the entire roster. We had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, Tightlines LSO, and also David Millsaps. And they said the Morse code for today says the Leaf Spring must work with all of its strength to support Ukraine. Long live the LSA, and the LSA never dies.
And that's the sound of money. And I gotta thank you all so much once again for getting that Morse code message correct. Y'all have gotten it right so many times, time and time again. It's the 665th day of the war. Tomorrow is going to be, oh buddy, y'all know it's going to be what day of the war is going to be. And a lot of y'all are like, that's a bad number. And no, it kind of is, but we're still going to run a stream. We still got to cover the news. But thank y'all for getting that Morse code message correct, and I think the message is clear. The Lee Spring Army is a holdout. Every other community in the Ukraine war sphere on YouTube, I'm not even kidding. We went around and looked, and I got to tell you this. We looked like yesterday, and the last time we looked before that was about like a month and a half ago. We looked around and we saw that a channel that was getting 1.2 million views before is hardly even breaking 400,000 views now. Some channels that were getting around 200,000 views a video on the war are now only getting around 40 to 50,000. Most of these communities have dropped off nearly 60 to 70%. The Lee Spring Army has only dropped off incredible only 15%, just about, over the past 2 months. And that is something that is showing me, out of every community that is going to endure, it's really going to be the Lee Spring Army. We're probably going to be one of those last bravura communities that sticks around until the Ukrainians win or until the war draws on forever. Who knows? But regardless, we are all going to be here, and we're all going to give it our best effort. I'm going to continue to be on air 6 days a week, every single day, covering this war, and I hope that all of y'all stay here with me and continue to carry the flag of the Lee Spring Army high, and our values and goals of continuing to support Ukraine until this war ends, until that last shot is fired on the battlefield. We are all going to be here making sure to cover the war and support Ukraine. It is more important now than ever that people endure. Back when the war was exciting and fun, sure, it was great to be a part of it. The war is starting to get into serious business now, and this is the point where true supporters of Ukraine show their marks. It's not when the war was the most exciting and it was in vogue and it was trending. It's when the war starts to, become a little bit more of an important, serious kind of a background work for most people around the world. That's when support for Ukraine really counts. But with that, thank you all so much once again for being here. And I see a lot of people saying, we're here, and I see you. But with that, I'm not going to do the whole 9/11 thing where you said, I see you, and America sees you, and the world sees you. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we actually have another super chat that just came in. This is from Butchie777 once again. It's a 10-pounder, and thank you very much for that support. They said, is U.S. supplied equipment built using the metric system or the imperial? And just wondering how the Ukrainians get on repairing them if both systems are used.
I think Butchie777. I hate that you asked that. I don't know. I actually don't know. I think U.S. supplied equipment possibly might be built on a metric instead of the imperial. But that kind of would be against the norm, because usually in America, most things are made in the imperial system instead of the metric system. So I don't know. I'd have to be honest. I hate to say this. You know what? Let's just Google the question. What measurement system do U.S. weapons use? That's a good way to ask the question. Most military firearms measured in metric units, beginning with the M14, which was introduced in 1957. Although there are a few legacy exceptions, such as the 50 caliber machine gun. Aircraft ordnance is usually normally measured in pounds. Heavy weapon caliber is measured in millimeters. So it looks like it may actually be, on the small arms side of things, may actually be metric. And it would make sense because we don't use the caliber measurement over here. I mean, we say 223 and 308, but when we actually talk about it in military terms, it's measured in millimeters, 556 by 45, 762 by 51, things like that. So I'm guessing that on the military term, and also Gregory Huey brought up something that I was thinking in my head that I didn't say, that 105 and 155 millimeter shells are measured in metric instead of imperial systems. So at least the ammunition is done through the metric system. I think the guns themselves may also be designed on the metric system, and also all of the other military equipment as well may be made on the metric system at this point. But sadly, I don't know enough about how the measurement system works with military manufacturing to give you an exact answer for everything. But I would probably say it's mostly done with metric. And also, to get on to the other part of that question, I don't know how they would repair them that way. I guess they just convert the imperial measurements, if it is imperial, to metric, or if it's metric, they don't have to worry about it, and it kind of is something they can already do. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And I was just told by Matthew something really shocking. We only have 3 live chat questions in the queue, and then we're done. That's actually shocking to me, but because we've covered so many that were sponsored by the live chats. But with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Barry Woodward, who says, any thoughts on how long would Ukraine last without U.S. support, and could European allies keep Ukraine alive until Russia relents?
I think Ukraine can survive indefinitely without U.S. support. Just that they'll never have an offensive again, most likely. They'll just have to hold a defensive war until the Russians give up, and who knows how long that could be. That could be years. If the Europeans support them, I hate to say it, because the Europeans are our allies and some of the best allies we have in the world. But it seems quite clear that the Europeans are not going to be able to fill in the gap that the U.S. has made, regardless of how much they go full throttle. I just don't think they're going to be able to pull it off. So going off that, I think the Europeans could help them through the war, but I don't think they're going to be able to help them enough where the Ukrainians could start those massive offensive like the Balaklia or Kherson offensive that we were seeing a while ago. But with that, I hope that does address that well, or at least the best it can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Old Foggy, who says, what do you boys think of the Russian 400,000 KIA by February 2024 on the 730th day, and thoughts? And me personally, I think they're going to hit that number, definitely, by February of next year. It's definitely going to happen, and, it's coming their way. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that they're probably going to hit that number a little bit before February, because it seems as though the general trend is that the casualty numbers are climbing on a daily basis on average. And so I think that, except for today, it was a bit of an exception with today. It was around 900. I think that we're probably going to see the numbers start hitting 1,500 as an average before that point. So they may even hit that well before February, maybe like mid to late January, that they start to reach that number. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Very interesting question, by the way. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who put in the lucky last question of the night?
All right, and that viewer is Barry Woodward, who says, North Korea has stated that they will take Taiwan, and how will the LSA cover this front amongst the other two fronts?
North Korea said they're going to take Taiwan?
Yeah, I was thinking that myself. I was like, did North Korea stay there or China? Because, surely North Korea is not planning to, row their way over to Taiwan.
Dude, North Korea whips out the fishing ships. They're like, we're fishing shrimp and we're fishing islands, so let's go grab one.
They're going to whip out the terrorized villagers and put them on the rowboats. Row, damn it.
Dude.
That ain't going to work out too well for them. Dude. At least China has junks, but North Korea doesn't even have that.
Dude, the North Korean villagers that are manning the oars, they're gonna look down into the water and see a school of fish and go, "I've never seen so much food in my life," and they're all gonna just jump overboard and go for the fish. But to be honest with you, because I would assume that you're talking about China, if that happened, and it probably won't, because it's been that has been a thing that people have been talking about as long as the war has been going on in Ukraine. It's been 2 years now, so I have a feeling that the chances of that happening will probably be a little low. And also, let's see. And Barry Woodward said, Xi said that to the President of the United States in San Francisco last month. So he's talking about China, not North Korea. So it must have been a little bit of a typo. And I do that a lot too. I think in one of our takes on the AK-74 review, I said AK-47. The AK-47 is a modified variant of the AKM or the AK-47. And it was a complete mix-up. So I've done that too. But with the Chinese, I don't think it's really going to happen. I think it would happen in 5-7 years maybe. Then it may be a realistic possibility. But right now, I just don't think it'll happen. But if it did, we would probably tie it into our news coverage a lot like we did with what was going on in the middle of the Eastern world, if you know what I mean. We'll probably just start to add that as an entire news segment. And that's how it will work. Because we always are going to keep up with our promise that we're going to cover the war in Ukraine until the very last day of the war or until we can no longer cover it. And so, going off of that, we would do the war with Taiwan the exact same way and just add it into our stream. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Very good question, Barry. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. And also, Barry, no problem at all. Barry said, my bad. We were just kidding around. If that came off like us being rude to you and joking about you, we weren't. We were just joking about the idea of the North Koreans invading Taiwan because it would be funny. Imagine North Korea trying to invade anyone. That would be a joke. It would be a comedy. But
Oh yeah, I try to take any chance I get to joke on North Korea. So Barry, you give me a perfect opportunity to talk about their boat situation.
Yeah, so don't think that was at you. That was at North Korea, and I think you for putting in that typo because it gave us a moment to start crapping on the North Koreans. But nevertheless, it is the end of the night stream. And also, Barry, that was a really good question. But I thank every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure covering this news tonight for all of y'all. And if y'all did enjoy, please make sure to subscribe and comment, and make sure to hit the like button as well. We've gotten up to around 1,800 likes tonight. Hopefully we can hit over 2,000. And of course, I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. I know y'all can't wait for the gun reviews. We're filming it tomorrow. Yeah! And good night.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, лейтенант.